How's it going, Andrew?
What's going on, Matt?
You've felt better.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
No, it was fun. Yeah, I was out last night. I had marched in the Milwaukee St. Patrick's Day parade with the hurling club. And that was a good time, but it was so windy, right?
Yeah.
For our listeners, in our area, there was gale force winds up to 60 miles an hour. And hurling is a sport where you hit a ball around. So we wanted to demonstrate hitting a ball around, but it's like there's people on both sides and there's 60 mile per hour like winds coming and going.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
So I decided I'm not going to hit because I'm not 100% confident I won't just hit a kid with the ball.
Right.
And so I was letting like some of our more skilled players, like some of the best ones on the team, they were hitting around because they have more like control, but even they were like a little iffy. So I was kind of doing hype man stuff, running around being like, come on guys, like woo, pump them up. Like running around, like giving out cards showing our information and stuff. But of course there was one point where we turn a corner and there's like a break where there's not really people. So I run out to take a pass. I catch a pass. I hit it back. And then I turned to the right to hand out a card to some kid. And the guy didn't realize I was going to stop hitting. And he hit the ball in the air. And my back was turned and it missed. Didn't hit a kid. Flew underneath a semi.
Oh, jeez.
That kid crawled under the semi. And I go, oh, my God. And he crawls underneath it. Because I was like, here's your ball back. And I was like, okay, thank you. I'm not going to hit around anymore.
Were you guys anywhere near the Highlanders?
They were in Blue Mountain.
Oh, okay. So
I know. I called them like 3 times.
I'm disappointed. I'm wondering. I'm just out of sheer curiosity how those kilts held up in those winds.
I suspect poorly, but it might have felt nice. No, but it's fun. And then I went to the Irish Heritage and Community Center, which is right down by the Triple I Shrine. It's an old church. They had dancers and bands and all that stuff. And of course, my hijinks never ended because I realized I didn't have $10 to get in the door. And I'm like, crap. And then I was like, okay, I know who runs this place. And I was like, hey. And like, yeah, you can get in free if you're a volunteer. And I went, do you need volunteers? And they're like, yeah, somebody called in. We need someone to work the door. And I was like, how long? And like 2.5 hours. And I went, okay. So then I went and worked the door for a while, stamping people's hands. You can see the stamp I got right here. Worked the door, took cash, and then I finally was able to be allowed in. So...
Nice. So you made less than $5 an hour to get yourself in.
Yeah, yep, got it. I did get a free meal out of it.
Oh, there you go.
A round of beer. They brought me some beer, so to thank me for doing it. So that was good.
Oh, there you go.
Watched some bands, and then went to County Clare, which had more bands. Then I should have went home, and I didn't. And then, yeah, now I'm here.
Shenanigans.
It was fun, though. It was fun. It was a good day. Enjoyed. And honestly, even with the wind, it was so nice outside. And I was like, heck yeah.
It was really nice outside. I opened up all the windows in the house while I was cleaning.
Blow the stink out.
Just had everything wide open until the temperature started dropping a little bit. And then I was like, all right, time to close her back up. I was not expecting to wake up to snow this morning, though.
Yeah, I literally, when I was laying in bed and I saw your text where you're like, how bad is the snow? And I looked at my phone and I went, snow? And then I was looked out the window and I go, what just happened out here? You ever heard of that? I'm looking it up. I forget the name. The German Luften, where they'll come home and either right when they get home or after cooking or something, they'll open all the windows in their house in the winter for like 5 minutes. It's called Stoofluften. It was just pronounced wrong. Someone's going to correct me, but it means shock ventilation. I've been doing that. I love it. Like, I feel like in the winter, the air gets so stagnant in the house where it's like dry. Claire hates it. That I open all the windows, but you turn like the AC down like, I don't know, 5 degrees, open all the windows for 5 minutes. The point is that it's not open long enough for the furniture and the walls to get cold, so it doesn't drastically increase your energy bill. You just blast the house with air.
Yeah.
I like doing it.
My house doesn't get dry. They make these things called April airs, that go right on the furnace and they're a whole house humidifier. So.
There's nothing better than just like that fresh.
No, I agree, but that's what I wait for spring for.
I know. It feels good in the winter, though, I think. Anyways, I want to get back to our actual topic, which is picking up dog poop in the winter. So we're going to go.
That's not happening for a couple of days now. It's going to be all muddy. And
mine's all gone because I cleaned it. I have nothing to do.
Oh, darn. All right, run the music.
Yes, sir.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
So our listeners seem to have decided that my wife has to take one of our places.
Yeah, I know. We'll have to arm wrestle for it.
Everybody's all about that episode.
You know what I was noticing is like she's got a voice for radio. Like the first 5 minutes, like I was just zoning out and putting the episode on to edit it. I'm sitting there, and then she starts talking. I go, "Whoa, hold on." I went, she kind of sounds like a radio person, right? I was like, this sounds like something I'd hear on, like, she's got like a radio voice. And I went, oh, it's like, man, she should quit her job and go on the radio. So then I texted her that. And then I heard later in the podcast her being like, oh, maybe I should start a podcast. And I was like, oh, she should start a podcast. And I was like, that's a good idea. Talking about books or board games or whatever she wanted to talk about. And I was like, oh, that'd be a good idea. Yeah, it was a fun episode to listen to, but I'm happy to be back from vacation.
Yeah. So
today we were thinking about talking about taking pride in one's lodge.
Yes, indeed.
It's kind of subtle, but I do think it's important.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, in order to do a job right, you have to be proud of like what you are a part of, and I'm sure we're all proud to be Freemasonry or Freemasons. Whew.
Proud to be Freemasonry.
Proud to be Freemasonry, right? Yeah. Man, you think I was the one out till all hours last night of talking like that? Yeah, but we're all proud to be Freemasons, but I think there's a particular thing, without being like arrogant, that comes with taking pride in your lodge and making sure that you're holding your lodge to high expectations and yourself to high expectations insofar as the degree work that you're putting on, or when you have various things that are due to the Grand Lodge, that are like yearly things you're supposed to submit, getting those in on time and things like that.
I think like if you think about like the allegory of the temple, building a temple, right? And we talk about how the temple is representative, or the lodge is representative of not only of an individual, it's of the physical space, it's of the world, right?
Right.
So it kind of goes up and down. That as Masons, we try to say we're trying to create something that's perfect. And I find it strange sometimes when people are willing to say, like, yes, this is what we're striving to do, but then they don't take that same approach when it comes to governing their lodge or like doing the work and stuff like that. And so I think it's important to, like, Masonry gives you an archetype, right? And they go, this is a perfect ashlar, right? Like, you'll probably never achieve this. No one really does. But it's a goal to strive for.
Right.
And so that lesson in itself, I think, applies to how you should try to govern your lodge. Because lodge is like practice. Like, you should be trying to elevate everything you do to have something that when you look back, when you're done, you're sweating from all your labors, you look back at your lodge and go, wow, it was doing the best it could.
Right.
And that you take pride in it, because I think that pride builds camaraderie. I think when a bunch of people are proud of their good work they're doing, it bonds people together. Mm-hmm. But also, like, I think it holds you to try to push yourself. And I think that the lodges that are proud of their work and they take great pride in their lodge are the ones who are doing a lot of times the better work.
Right. And I would agree. And on an individual level, right, we should all be putting in the work to improve ourselves, regardless of whether we're in the officer line or a sideliner or whatever we're doing in relation to the lodge, right? But you can almost think of it as there are two paths in Masonry to choose to a certain extent. One, which is be a sideliner, enjoy being part of the lodge, be there if the lodge wants you to do something small, but you're really not interested in putting in the work necessarily to run the lodge. You want to benefit from what those people are doing, right? That's one potential path you can take. And the other potential path you can take is choosing to accept an appointment or the results of an election and becoming an officer. And if you choose to do that, you have to understand that it comes with work, and that's what you owe to your lodge that you are proud of.
Yep, and that when given responsibility, it should be taken. Like, Masonry is not a second job. Sometimes it can feel like it, but you know what I mean? It's not a second job. It is something that it was optional. And when you agree to take whatever appointment, no matter how big or small, right? Some appointments come with higher baggage than others as far as stuff you have to do. But even within that small appointment, here's a good example. So our current chaplain, Sean, worshipful brother Sean, he looked at that position, and the moment he was like, said, I want to try to flesh this out more. I don't want to just do prayers. He's like, I want to check in with people who are sick. And he's like, I want to try to create a position that you could be proud of, right?
Right.
And he's been doing great work with that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the right mentality to kind of have, is like, look at what you're being asked to do and try to do it to the highest level.
Right.
And like a lot of the charters, I guess the charter's not the word, but the charges of a position are fairly broad in some cases. They're telling you, like, this is what I want you to kind of do. There's some parts of it that are very prescribed, and there's other parts where it's like, well, it falls under your umbrella, and like you can interpret how that goes out. And I think that when you're trying to create a lodge that you're proud of, it's about making sure people are taking pride in the positions they're given.
Yes.
So that, you have how many officers are there? 13?
I don't think it's 13. Worshipful, senior warden, junior warden, senior deacon, junior deacon, 2 stewards, secretary, treasurer, musician, counselor, 11.
All right, 11. So if there's like...
Tyler, 12.
12. That's close. So like if you have 12 people in these positions who are taking great pride in their work, I feel like you're going to start to see a lodge you're proud of like pretty quickly, because everyone is trying to push the boundaries and make something special.
Right. And I would agree with you there. And you need to be lifting everybody up and empowering them to be able to do their job, right? We've all heard talk of like micromanagers that want to have their like fingers in on everything. Whereas like if you empower someone to do their job, they're going to find the way that works best for them to do it and then get it done, hopefully, right? And if they're not getting it done, then that's when you step in and you maybe take the reins a little bit.
Or you explore and see where the problems are. I mean,
right.
I was watching one of the panels that the education committee does. They've done a variety of really, really good panels. And if you're a Wisconsin brother, you can find that under the education section of the Wisconsin Masons website. But So I was watching it, and this guy was talking about decentralized leadership and how it works. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what we do for the most part. And I liked what he was talking about, where he was kind of explaining you need to trust who you're putting in a position, or you shouldn't put them in the position, right?
Right.
And he goes, you need to empower those individuals to make decisions themselves, so that the leader doesn't have to necessarily weigh in on every single little tiny thing, that the leader can focus more on the bigger mission, and then trust the people he put in these positions or who are elected to do their parts however they need to do it, right? And everyone does stuff differently, but what that breeds is innovation, because people are going to think about how to do things either differently, maybe better, maybe worse, you never know.
Right.
But then you can learn along the way, like what does work, what's not working, so you can create better systems and programs on how you kind of run your lodge.
You want to know who the master of teaching about decentralized command is?
Jocko Willink.
Yeah. All of his stuff is based off of decentralized leadership.
I know. When I was junior warden, and after the Burns dinner, which I think I maybe mentioned in the podcast, but I've told you, like, I had like a bad time, and afterwards I was like, what am I doing wrong? I was like, I don't know how to like do this. I read his book on, I forget which one is his famous one.
The one he wrote with Leif Babin, the field survival leadership thing.
I think it's the other one. It's like something about decentralized leadership.
There's extreme ownership.
Extreme ownership was one.
Yep.
And kind of the way it talked about, like, you need to like really motivate your guys to own parts of their work. And I was like, because that builds pride. Right. When they plan something themselves and they nail it, that builds pride, and that builds pride in your lodge and pride in what you're doing. And I found huge success in just being like, I'm going to build a team that I can trust, and I'm going to make them feel that they're connected to the mission as close as possible,
right?
And that they have a direct influence over how it's done,
right? In
a way that you can say we were collaborating, but we're also like, I'm not just going to go and be like, do this, do this, do this, do this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be like, all right, guys, here's what we're trying to do. This is my suggestion. And they'd be like, I like that, but have we considered this? And I'd be like, oh, you know what? That's not a bad idea. I think let's do a little bit of mine here on this part. I think that's better. And let's take what you're doing and let's do both. And I said, let's find the best solution and then move forward.
Right. Well, we're all trying to get from point A to point B, right? And you might see path X to get there. I might see path Y to get there. And somebody else might see path Z. And one of those is going to be the best option, and it might not necessarily be your own, or it might be a combination of all three that works to get there, right? So when you empower people to take pride in what they're doing and own what they're doing and get it, find their own methodology to get it done, you might come up with ways you never would have thought of to get it done that might be more efficient or might work better, or at the end of the day, just work better for that person, for them to be able to get the job done.
That's what I was just thinking is like, even if it's not necessarily, maybe it was slightly less efficient, but you gave that guy ownership to have a little control over their work, which can motivate them to work harder and be more effective because their voice matters. And I think that when you give people that ownership, when a job is done, they are so much more proud of the job that they not only contributed to, but they also took an active part in creating. I think it builds like way more like pride. And with that, even on small wins, like we had one of our sideliners, Chris, come forward with an event.
Right.
We forced him to run it. And I knew
voluntold him.
Yeah. And I knew he was nervous about it. And the event ended up being a massive success. Right. And I could see it in his eyes at the last meeting, how proud he was, how good it went, and how excited he was about trying to plan it again for next year. And I was like, that's what you got to be doing, is stuff like that. Empowering people to take pride and have a voice and ownership within their lodge.
Right.
So they truly feel proud of their lodge.
Now, on the flip side of the coin, if you run decentralized command and you give people ownership and everything over their own projects, if you don't get that project done, somebody's going to be coming down on you.
Yeah, you're going to be the ultimate one responsible.
Right. You're going to have to answer for why it didn't get done because now you owned it. That was your job.
Well, and it's nice when you give people that power early in their their Masonic officer's journey, because that means when they get to a position with high responsibility, there's probability that there had been times when they were given responsibility that they may not have done what's supposed to, and they were corrected, but someone's like, hey man, you can't do this. So by the time they get to a higher position, they are unwilling to not see the job done.
Right, exactly. And they're going to be the ones that at the end of the day, if they come up in that style of leadership, are going to go, hey, all right, so now I'm going to give that to you guys. But same thing, if you don't get it done, then I'm going to be on you about it because I empowered you to get it done and you didn't come through.
Yep. And then they know how it feels then to have to be the person who has to be the scolder instead of the scoldee.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's important, there's a lot of stuff that goes into keeping a lodge in good standards and doing good work. And with that, there's a lot of things you have to do, not only within the lodge, but with your communication with the Grand Lodge and trying to keep up on all their regulations and all of our local regulations and all that stuff.
Right.
And there's an importance on trying to, meet deadlines and stuff like that, because there's someone else on the other end who has work that is dependent on that, whether it be paying your dues on time or whatever it is. You, by not being effective, create work for other people.
Right. Somebody is always on the other end of that, of whatever you're supposed to be doing, right? So if you are supposed to pay your dues before December 31st to make sure the lodge can cut their per capita check, then get your dues paid because the lodge is dependent on it. If you are supposed to have X, Y, or Z document Grand Lodge at a certain time, there's probably somebody that has to compile those documents for another reason. And if you're starting to be late, now you're screwing over somebody else. And that's not how we should operate, right? If you're taking pride in your position and in your lodge and everything else, that is not how you should be operating.
Correct. And I think if you're in a lodge and you don't feel like you have much to be proud of, I think that's a huge flag that it's time to get your butt in gear. Right. Because I think it's important that some lodges are struggling or having a hard time, but you can still find a way to be proud of your lodge by just getting to work, right?
Right.
Even if it's in a smaller way, because you might not have the resources or the manpower that you need to do it at the highest level. within that parameter, you can still do a lot of really, really cool stuff. I've been talking to a lot of smaller lodges that are starting to see like growth again because in their small way, they're like, okay, we don't have 1 million people. We can't do like these massive events, but that doesn't mean we can't do anything. Right. And they start saying, what can we do? And let's get to work on creating something we can be proud of. And those lodges have started to flourish and starting to see, people coming back because no one wants to hang out in a place where they feel like it's, they don't take pride in it. They're like, ugh, I got to go to this thing. It's just lame. And you're like, okay. Right. And like, that doesn't motivate people.
Well, I think it's important. I was actually going to bring this up. How can you bring pride back to your lodge if you feel like it's not there? And I think in Freemasonry, we have a very obvious way to be able to do that. Start with your opening and closing and degree work and everything else, and start instilling a sense of high expectations and pride in how you do those things you do all the time, right? Why do they teach you to make your bed with crisp corners and everything else in boot camp, right? Because it's that discipline thing, right? Yep. And it's something you can take pride in. So if you start taking that attitude of discipline towards like opening and closing and, just your ritual work, and you start instilling a sense of pride because you start doing it at a higher level and really well, that's going to start to filter over into other stuff.
Yep, and it's like make the bed's a great analogy. It's the first quick and easy touch to say, I'm going to do something with pride, even small, and start my day. And you can do that. There's plenty of things in Masonry that you do every day and every stated, and you can look at it and say, can I do this at the highest level? Right. What does that look like? And can I hold myself and my lodge accountable to do that as well?
Exactly.
Yep.
I think that's a great place to leave this one. We'll keep it relatively short because we have a couple minutes here till we talk to our very special guest for next week's episode.
Yeah, indeed. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our episode. I'm proud to be a Freemason, and
so am I.
And I think it's good to think about pride in one's lodge. But thanks for tuning in, and check us out on social media. And if you ever want to email us for any reason, feedback or whatever,
timeforfellowship@gmail.com.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Have a great day.